George, you remember growing up when we grew up in the 80s and or 70s too. If you go over to a friend's house, do you remember going to a friend's house? What was your idea of wealth when you went to their house? Like for me, if I went to somebody's house, right, and they had an extra refrigerator in the garage just stocked with popsicles and sodas, that was a sign of wealth. I'm like, oh my God, mind blown. We have one refrigerator at home, no sodas, just Kool-Aid and Velveeta cheese. What was your sign that somebody had some money? I mean, even cable TV back then, oh my God, they got cable.
All right, so you hit on two of them. Because number one, I was always also impressed with the extra refrigerator. I was like, wow, you've made it if you got an extra refrigerator.
Right,
and then the cable TV, because for a long time, my father was like, what do you need cable TV for? So I was like, we just had the, WHEC and ROC and all that.
Your 4 channels.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then, so when they had cable and they had that giant, when I saw the cable box with the push buttons on it.
And the little dial and you had to line it all up. Yeah.
Yep. And then you just it was like their version of a remote control, but it sat in your lap. I remember it was a giant, the initial cable TV thing. And I can't remember whose house it was, but that I was like, oh, wow. They've got
right.
And that and Betamax.
Betamax too. Right. Because there was no VHS at the point. And there's that giant machine and the door, the thing would go,
yep.
Right? And then you got to put the thing in.
And then the giant disc things too, whatever they were called.
They were laser discs.
Oh,
right?
that's right. Laser discs.
Yeah. I think you still get that, right? No? I don't know. I'm not.
But I was very impressed by stuff like that.
Here's the other thing. When you go to somebody's house and they had the 2-door fridge with the ice maker on the front, right? Had an ice maker and you're like, what? We have to use that metal tray with the crank to get the cubes out. And they have back then it was terrible because you either get 2 or 2,000 ice cubes.
Right.
It never gave you just a 3 or 4. It just came pouring out and the rest is on the floor.
Right.
But that was another sign of, to me, that was like, oh my God.
Yeah, we were just filling up trays, remember? And then you don't fill up the tray and it's like, who didn't fill up the tray?
Yeah, who left the tray in here empty?
Yep.
I'm like, oh, sorry. So-and-so has a refrigerator that spits out ice cubes. And then my mom was like, oh, we're not Rockefellers over here. We can't have a refrigerator like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But those were the signs for me for a lot of wealth. But
no, I agree. I mean, I think today it's a lot different. But
there's different markers of wealth now. And I can't even think everybody has everything now.
Right.
And
half the time you don't even know if it's real anyway. It's like, oh, wow, look, he's got the guy we always see around town in Rochester with the Lamborghini. What's the...
Yeah, no, that's not even a Lamborghini. What is it?
It's I don't know. It looks like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, one of those things.
He's like a cartoon character, this guy.
Yeah. The hood opens and it's a trunk in there and then people are all surrounding him.
Yeah, they hang out and he's got games in there.
Show, George.
Who do you got today? Food.
Yeah.
Right.
We have today, boy, are you guys in for it today. Talk about an accomplished young woman. I was talking with her before, and I said, at the risk of sounding condescending, you are such an accomplished young woman.
And she is.
Wait till you hear where she is today. We're going to start with where she is today, and then when you hear how she got there, there's none of you have any excuses for not doing what you really want to do.
Yeah, Daphne is a classic underachiever. That's what she is.
Yeah. Well, you gave away her name, but
I know. But you go ahead and introduce her.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Yeah. And it's not Daphne from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. We are so excited to have Daphne Pariser here today. Daphne is zooming in from Boston. I'm not going to say specifically where because I'm going to leave that to you, Daphne. So welcome. You can say hi to everybody.
How's everybody doing today?
We're doing good.
We are doing great. Thanks for jumping on a little earlier this morning. We appreciate that. Flexibility in your schedule. Let's get right into it. So instead of going through the beginnings and telling your story to where you are now, let's start with where you are now because I think everybody's going to be super impressed. And then it's going to be really great to backtrack to see how you got there. So tell us, where are you now? What are you doing? Let it roll.
Yeah. So right now like you said, I'm in Boston and I am going to be working at Harvard Medical School. So I will be working in a laboratory here at Harvard where I'll be studying the lungs and basically I'll be studying
the lungs. Okay.
Yeah. So so there is a cell in the lungs that is a very interesting cell that seems to have a dual function that potentially has the ability to both make platelets and also have the ability to interact with the immune system. And so I'm going to be working on that. So I'm very excited to be here and be part of the medical team at Harvard and see what we can do.
So the platelets, that would be, if I remember from my biology class, that's in the blood, right? That has something to do with the blood.
So basically, when you cut your arm or something like that, one of the reasons that you stop bleeding is because platelets come to that site of injury and they'll spread over that site of injury and they'll basically form a clot, and that's what's going to help you to stop bleeding.
Right, the clot. Mm-hmm. Got it. And then with the immune system, are we talking in the lungs, especially with what's going on today? Is this relevant to that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of published data, a lot of unpublished data about these cells in COVID-19.
Okay.
And there's still a lot of debate because obviously COVID-19 is super new. But there are some laboratories that think that that COVID-19 can infect these cells. And then there's still a lot of debate about whether these cells have the ability to present this COVID-19 to the rest of the immune system to basically mount a response. But that is still really very new data. There's still a lot that's being done with that. We really don't know. But basically, there is a thought that platelets and this other cell called megakaryocytes are involved. There's just still a lot that we're trying to work out.
And these are cells that, if that were true, would you farm them from the lungs and or do they just automatically distribute to other parts? I'm not really good with circulatory systems, so.
Yeah. So it's a good question, and it's still something that we're working on too. So that was part of my dissertation, was one, identifying that they are in the lung, and then another part that we just didn't have time to get to in my PhD was, do they have the ability to migrate to other places? Now, it does seem that they are in other tissues. And the question then is, do they migrate to those tissues, or are they just there from birth or for other different reasons? And so those are other questions that we're still looking at. So we've actually known about these cells for the last 100 years, but there hasn't been a ton of studies about these cells in the lungs and other organs except for the bones. So this is just a bunch of new data that we get to really look at and play with. So it's part of why my job is so exciting, because it's kind of just like this big playground of all of these unanswered questions. And I'm really sorry, my cat wants to be part of it.
I just heard that. That's great.
I thought it was a baby.
Yeah. No, I love that there's a cat. And I love how she casually throws in the reference to her PhD.
No, I know.
I think that's great. Yeah.
She's Dr. Pariser now.
That's right. Oh, wait. I can't believe you left that out.
You didn't even address her properly. It was kind of rude. That's a lot of hard work. Those two letters, DR.
Dr. Pariser, I apologize. So this is a recent development?
Yes, as of last Monday.
Well, there we go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is incredible. I'll tell you, the underachievers we have on this show, it's incredible. It's great.
Weekly. Every week there's some underachiever. Daphne, were you always smart growing up, or is this something that just came about in your 20s?
Actually, no. So it's really funny. I mean, I guess it depends on how you classify smart. So when I was young, I used to write everything upside down and backwards. And so my teachers used to fail me on all my assignments because they thought that I was doing it on purpose. So they used to have to hold things up to mirrors to be able to read it properly, but it was still upside down. And so that was an issue. I almost failed out of 3rd through 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
And then I wasn't reading at the right reading levels all the way through 5th grade. I couldn't read out loud because I had dyslexia. I failed when I was in high school. In middle school, I failed out of Spanish 1 twice. Failed out of Spanish 1 in high school, somehow made it into Spanish 2 for some reason. I think it was actually a mistake. Got an A in Spanish 2 for some weird reason. And then failed out of math like 3 times, got put in remedial math. They finally figured out that I was dyslexic. And then after that, I was able to figure the rest of my life out once
You're able to focus a little better. Yeah. I was similar. I was similar. I was in all the decelerated classes is what they called it. But I just didn't care. That was my problem.
Yeah. I didn't really care either. I mean, I failed out of a lot and it didn't really bother me much.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. So, all right. So we know you're at Harvard now. You're studying that cell, the platelets, the immune system, and you're going to be there, 3 to 4 years, maybe?
Yeah, that's the idea. Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. So we just heard a little bit about how you grew up in terms of education. Why don't we go back and work up to how you got to where you are today? And we could start. I mean, we might as well start when you were 10. Let's talk about that famous 10-year-old trip or that trip you took at 10 years old. Forgive me, doctor. I put my past participles or whatever in the wrong area, but yes.
So when I was 10 years old, I took a trip to Kenya. And when I was there, I had been living in Los Angeles for most of my life up to that point. And when I was in Los Angeles, I had seen poverty before, but I had never really witnessed poverty to this extent. So poverty in Los Angeles is pretty striking.
Yep.
I'm sure we've all seen poverty to some extent, but when I went to Kenya, we were on this bus ride. The bus came to this red light. It stopped. And I looked out to my window and I saw this boy running up to the window. He banged on our window and he started begging for food, for help, for money, for anything. And he couldn't have been older than me. I mean, he looked my age. He was pretty small, but he had, yellow eyes. He had a bloated stomach. And I just couldn't understand how he was out on the streets begging for money while I was privileged sitting in this bus on this trip in Kenya. And so I was having this moment with this child, and in the back I heard laughter. And I turned around and there were 2 people on the bus who were taking a picture of this kid and laughing. And to my 10-year-old brain, I couldn't understand that. And I, to this day, don't know exactly what they were laughing about, but it tore me to shreds. And I just started crying. And as soon as I look back at this kid, our bus takes off. And that interaction could have lasted maybe 10 seconds. It felt like an eternity to me, but it literally tore my heart to shreds.
So these were people on on your bus that were taking the photos. Got it.
Bus. And this was a private bus. So these were all people that were on our trip with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anyway, so we were on this trip for 2 weeks, and basically every night I was crying. And then eventually our tour guide came up to me and he basically was just like, stop crying, pull up your big girl pants and do something about it. Like, if you are really this affected by poverty, you have the ability to do something about it because you are privileged. You are this white American who comes from a family that does have some money, that does have resources. Do something about this. And so 10-year-old me says, okay, I'm going to do something about this. So I go home, start a little money jar and start putting money in the little jar.
Okay.
And that's kind of how everything gets started.
So what got started though with that? So you started putting everything in a money jar, and then how many years was money going into the jar?
So my mom and I raised probably $500 that year.
Okay.
And we sent money. I think that year we ended up sending money to India. And then we continued doing that basically every year. And then when I was in a sophomore in college, which I think I was 21 at that point, 20 or 21, I went back to Kenya by myself, and I didn't have any ideas about what I wanted to do. All I knew was that I wanted to try to listen. I wanted to try to be in the area where I knew people potentially needed resources, and I wanted to hear from them directly what the things were that they needed. So I didn't want to go in. I didn't want to.
So this was something you did on your own. You went.
I did on my own.
Okay,
I paid for everything.
You went. Okay.
Yeah, I went totally by myself. I knew somebody in Kenya. And so he basically toured me around, but I paid for everything. I paid for my plane ticket, the gas, the car, everything. And so we went village to village, school, house. We talked to all sorts of different people. We talked to family members, to elders of the communities, to children, to school teachers, everybody. And we asked them, what are the issues that you're facing? How would you solve them if you had unlimited resources? So if you could come up with your own solution, how would you solve your own problem? Because to us, these people deal with these problems every single day. So for me, they were the ones that were best suited to come up with their own solutions to these problems, rather than me coming in and just coming up with a solution, or anybody else who had all these fancy degrees. It just seemed like people who really understood.
Yeah, like you're going to be a big hero, right? Because I think that's a big issue today. Well, it continues to be today, where people come in thinking, "Oh, I'm going to solve everything.
These are my ideas.
Yeah, I'm going to solve everything for everybody."
Yeah,
exactly. So what I knew was that I had some money behind me. I had some resources behind me, but they had the solution. So if they could tell me what they needed, we could try to figure out how to get that stuff there. So we talked to all these people. I think I spent 3 weeks there. And then at the end of the 3 weeks, we sat down and basically everybody had the same idea. They wanted to build something that was sustainable. They wanted to basically generate their own income so that they could send their kids to get an education and that they could have more health care for their community. They wanted to end their cycle of poverty, and the way that they wanted to do that was through education and health care. But they wanted to do it sustainably, so they needed an income.
Right.
And the way that they wanted to do that was to buy and sell cattle, because that was the most economic way to do that in their area of Kenya. So I said, well, that sounds easy to me. So I went back to the US.
That sounded easy to you. Okay.
Well, it sounded easy to me.
I know.
So
Yeah. I'm teasing.
So I went back to the US, but for the next 6 months, we were on phone calls, we were on Skype calls for 6 months, hammering out this business plan with me, with all the people on the ground, with the elders, with, everybody that we could think about who had cow businesses, who didn't have cow businesses, who, everybody who needed these and who already had them, who could give us what we needed to know to basically build these. And then we started our construction and all that sort of stuff, and we started fundraising. And
so did this give birth to humansforeducation.org?
Yes. So this is where we started. So we became a 501c3 in 2016. And it ended up taking us 3 years to officially research everything. So we built that one school within 6 months, but then we used that as basically our research for the first 2-3 years so that we could kind of figure out what worked and what didn't work. And then we applied for our 501c3 and we set up our real full model, which is now what we have as humansforeducation.org. And so now we're up and running, and we do this with multiple schools, and we're hoping to continue doing this with many more schools.
So this Humans for Education is basically your life's work, correct?
Basically, yeah.
So when you're doing something like this, and you're trying to be culturally sensitive to the people's needs that you're working with, what are some stumbling blocks that you came across while doing this?
In terms of working with the community, or in terms of
working with the community? Did it go smoothly, or were there some bumps in the road?
It actually, I say this, we get this question all the time, and I feel like the luckiest nonprofit ever because we have had almost no issues with the community. And I think it's because of the way that we approached it. Because we came in and we said, what are the issues that you have? Let's work together on a solution that is your solution. And the thing is, we don't come in and build something. We sit down and we take 6 to 8 months to work with them on building this solution first. So I think we have a really good understanding with the community. And so typically when we do this with a school that already exists to give them an income, but the entire community is involved.
Right.
So we've actually really haven't had issues. We haven't had, like, you know, you hear these stories where nonprofits have a lot of theft and have a lot of these issues. We really haven't had a lot of that. And I think part of the issue, or part of the reason, is because we hire a lot of people locally. Good. And so people know that if they steal from our programs, they're stealing from their own kids, because their kids go to school at these schools. So I think, honestly, like, one of the biggest issues that we've had is funding and volunteers. Okay. It's just like, that's the capacity, you know, is as many people as we can get.
Okay. So just to kind of tie this together, 10 years old, you had an emotional moment. You had an emotional connection. You and your mom started with money in a cookie jar, right, and sent the money overseas to India, actually, instead of, so to India. And then you took it upon yourself your sophomore year to go there. And this is where this is where humansforeducation.org was born. Yeah,
but George, let's point out the fact that at 21, when most kids are going to Cancun for spring break.
That's true.
Daphne went to Kenya.
That's right.
Right. Go ahead.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, I know it's a good point.
Well, I'm glad you do. And here we are with humansforeducation.org, which we'll talk about at the end of the show, and it'll be on our socials. So here you've created this amazing thing purely out of your emotions and out of your heart, which is very, very rare. So how do we get to Harvard after this? Where did this I'm going to get a PhD, I'm going to study cells. I mean, it's pretty incredible. So you already built one great organization for others. Now you're building your own for yourself. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, well, I actually, before I started Humans for Education, you know, it was always in the back of my head, but the idea was always that I had this sense of, you know, I wanted to do something for my community, and I really just didn't know what it was. So originally I went to school and I was thinking, okay, I want to maybe be a therapist. And I actually worked on a suicide hotline for 3 years, and I couldn't cope with it. I was taking callers home with me every night. Like I couldn't leave them at the hotline. I would come home crying, and I just couldn't deal with it. So I realized that was not for me. I couldn't be a therapist because...
Well, bravo for doing it for 3 years, though.
Yeah, no, impressive.
So that's impressive.
It's really hard. Honestly, like, to all the therapists out there, to all the hotline callers, like, thank God you guys are there, because we really need you. But oh my gosh, it is so hard.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do that. So then I thought, okay, well, maybe I want to do something behind the scenes. You know, I thought about being a medical doctor, but again, it's really personal. You see people actually suffering. So I thought maybe more behind the scenes is better for me, where I don't have to actually physically interact with the people. And that's why I thought medical science would be better for me. And that's kind of how I got into the medical science where I am today. And then while I was in school to do medical science, that's when I decided, you know what, I do want to go back to Kenya, and I want to see if this is also an opportunity for me too. So kind of side by side, these two ideas were kind of happening together. And then during my PhD, actually the second year of my PhD is when we officially launched the 501c3. So it was definitely, it was a lot of fun. I mean, doing the PhD and the nonprofit side by side were very difficult, but it was a lot of fun, and it's really rewarding to be able to do both, to be honest.
Has to be.
It has to be.
I know. I couldn't imagine juggling both those things. George, I want to point out that, like, back in spring of Was it spring of 2019 you did your TED Talk?
Yes.
Spring,
yep.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So back in that time period, she did that, and people, you should check it out. It's on YouTube. Check out her TED Talk. Put in Daphne Pariser TED Talk and check it out. It's really well done. But in June, the following June of 2019, Daphne put together a fundraiser at Comedy at the Carlson, which I was a part of, and she did. It was called, I think, One Step Beyond, right? Is that yeah? Mm-hmm. One Step Beyond, and she got just local news people, comedians, just different people from around Rochester to go up and speak and tell a little bit about their stories. And it was really well done. And Daphne, talk a little bit about that. How much money did you raise, and what did that money go towards?
So we ended up raising $21,000 in one night, which was awesome. It was actually an incredible turnout. We had what was it, 12 speakers that night? I think it was a lot of speakers. Mm-hmm. And we ended up having I think we sold out. We had a lot of people show up. I was just so impressed. I was so nervous, to be honest, because I don't normally speak in front of such a large crowd. And I was supposed to speak at the end, and I kept telling Todd, I'm not ready. I can't go out there.
Nobody's going to show up. Nobody's coming to this.
Did she cry again?
No, she didn't cry. Okay. No, just no tears. No tears. I had a hanky ready. Yeah.
So we ended up raising $21,000, and that went towards building a clinic out in Kenya.
Right. Oh my gosh!
This clinic. So the area of Kenya where we work, there is basically no dental clinics for more than, in one direction, almost 80 miles, in the other direction about 50 miles. And so there was one about 20 miles away, but that just closed down. And so we're basically now the only dental clinic. And so there's still some stuff that we're working on to open that, but we actually officially turned on the lights about 2 months ago. And we now we're basically almost up and running. So hopefully we'll be up and running pretty soon. The only frustrating thing is obviously COVID. And so we're still working through that, but basically everything is built, and it's, there we have all of the machines. And so I was there in February, and it's so beautiful. So basically we raised the money in, it was March or May of last year?
June.
June of last year. So June of last year, we raised this money. It's totally built now, and we have all of the machines, and basically it should be up and running within the next few months, pending COVID. So
that's incredible. Honestly, I'm semi-speechless. That's incredible. Congratulations. So speaking of COVID, you've done a lot with your time pre-COVID, during COVID. What do you, and again, the one thing we pride ourselves on in this show is that we don't try to tell people what to do, but we like people to listen to what other people are doing and hopefully get inspiration from that. What do you think about, how do you think people could, not should, could be using their COVID time best? Because they've been in COVID time since March. Yeah, some people have work. Listen, I've been working, 4 hours a day? We all realize that an 8-hour workday is total bull. You don't need 8 hours to do your work. If you're focused, you can get it done probably in 4, some people less. So how do you think people could use their COVID time? Because look what you've been using it for. And it's almost like, just to inspire people, anyway, I don't want to answer my own question. You go ahead. How do you think people could use it best?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different things that people could be doing. So one, during COVID, we've actually had more people applying to be volunteers than we've ever had.
That's great.
Ever, which is awesome. And we now have your favorite thing, George.
Oh, here we go.
We now have a dedicated TikTok team, which we didn't have before, which was awesome. But we actually now have 70 million followers on TikTok, something like that. I haven't checked.
Really? That many?
Yeah. Which is surprising.
She's worldwide.
80,
What?
wait, 88 or 80 million TikTok followers?
She's looking right now.
Oh, geez, don't.
here we go.
Last time this was a rabbit hole. Be careful.
These two could go back and forth on point counterpoint on what the pros and
We're
cons
not
of
getting into TikTok today,
TikTok
but yeah.
are.
Oh, sorry, 80,000. Sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, 80.
3 million,
Okay, 80,000. Doctor.
80,000.
Yeah. Okay.
3 million.
80 million is like cells.
Yeah.
We're talking people here, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah. So 80,000 followers, 3 million likes.
Okay. Well, all right. There's a million.
All right. There's the million.
Right.
3 million likes.
So she was right. Yeah. There's.
It's been a while since I've been on TikTok.
Sorry.
Anyway,
Yes.
which is
probably an
really
hour ago.
exciting because on our Facebook we only have like 800 likes, and on Instagram it's like 1,000 and whatever. So it's very, very surprising to us that we were able to get that many followers.
Right.
For,
So you've been getting a lot of volunteers.
Yeah. So that, and then also, because of COVID, a lot of the people in our area have been struggling. So people who we work with, they live on $2 a day or less, most of them. So as soon as COVID hit, the Kenyan government shut down immediately, which I credit them because of that, they've had very few cases.
Mm-hmm.
But that has been very, very, very hard for their citizens. But I still think that they did, the best that they could with what they were given. So COVID is hard for everybody, and so I think that was necessary. So the people that we work with, when they shut down, there were no provisions for these people. And so within a week, they started to starve. So right away, we had to switch our model and start feeding these people, which we were not prepared to do at all. So we jumped on the phone. Luckily, because we had just been getting in all these volunteers, we started training people right away how to call people, how to handle donors. We started calling people right away, like, hey, we need money like right now. We need to start feeding these people. And we were really lucky. We started getting grants in. We got a grant from the Annenberg Foundation, thank God, like right away, which really saved us those first few months.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to feed, we have fed 3,000 people every single month since March. And we've given out over 560,000 meals.
That's fantastic.
Those numbers are accurate.
Yeah, that's great.
Those numbers are accurate?
Yes.
No.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So I think I think the message here is that, whether it's people volunteering for your organization, humansforeducation.org, or other organizations, it's really about during COVID, look and see what people are in need and what you could do. It could be your next door neighbor, or it could be an organization like yours. One quick other question I have, and again, maybe there's only one or two things you can talk about here, but with all the actions you've taken on poverty and education in Kenya, do you think one or two of those could apply to what's going on in the U.S. in terms of our education system and poverty? I know it's it's a bigger discussion, which when we have you back, we'll talk about that. But just seeing everything, I'm like, wait a minute, there's actions probably we could be doing here a lot better, especially in terms of education to help prevent poverty.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is that what we know from years of research. So obviously I'm a scientist and research is all I do. And so that's part of the reason that what we do works really well is because we've researched it a lot. Education is one of the most effective ways to get people out of poverty. And so really making sure that there is enough funding in education is really, really important. The second thing is also the model that we use where we help people earn their own income is a model that can be used anywhere. And that's the reason we built that model. So the whole idea of microfinance, of helping people build their own businesses, is a really sustainable concept that that should be used and should be prioritized for helping people out of poverty. And I think that unfortunately, sometimes people who need that most are frequently overlooked because of their status, because of their skin color, because of a lot of different things, equity, all sorts of different things. And unfortunately, they are the ones that would benefit from it the most.
There's actually a company we're going to have him on. Hopefully, he just did his first seed round of funding, and he's actually addressing this issue. It's through banking, but it's a new type of bank. Something I'd actually probably will invest in going forward. So yeah.
What's it called?
We'll talk about that later. Yeah.
It's our surprises, Daphne.
It's kind of stealthy right now. Yeah. I just had a chat with him yesterday. It's really interesting.
Yeah, we don't want to let it out to. We got 100 million listeners. We don't want to ruin it.
That's right.
So, Daphne, listen. Humans for Education does ton, and they did, back before COVID, did a lot of fundraisers, and you guys are always looking for money. Are there ways? Can people go right on your website and donate if they'd like to?
Yeah. So you can go straight to humansforeducation.org. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we're doing right now is you can actually sponsor a family for $45 a month. So basically, if you want to feed a family of about 7 people, it really doesn't cost you a whole lot of money. It's basically like a Starbucks a week. And that can basically feed them every single day for a month. And this is going to basically, as you can see, COVID is going to keep going for a little while. So, we would really appreciate the help.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that is. You're an impressive woman, Daphne Pariser, and I'm glad we're friends. I'm glad you approached me after that one show you came to and see me, and you're just very impressive. And congratulations on all you're a doctor now. You weren't a doctor when I met you.
I know. I'm very excited. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on the show. This is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Can I ask you one quick thing? From your TED Talk, who's your go-to superhero? Because you definitely have a superhero thing, as do I.
My go-to superhero. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's a really hard question. Okay, probably one of my go-to. I have 2. Wonder Woman. Just because obviously she's the feminist and I love her. And then Iron Man is definitely one of my second go-to because I really identify with a lot of
do I. That's my go-to is Iron Man. My previous teams always called me Tony Stark.
Always has been.
Yeah. Always has been. All right.
Mine, you didn't ask me. Mine is the ambiguously gay duo. Yeah, those are my favorite. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Scott's as well.
This is, well, Daphne, I have to echo Todd's words. I feel very fortunate and lucky that I was able to meet you 2 weeks ago. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the show. And if this isn't inspiration for our listeners out there, I don't know what is. 10 years old, you had an idea, you had an emotional reaction, you built an incredible organization. And again, you guys will be able to get everything on our website and on all our socials about Daphne, including her TED Talk. And you've helped shift a country's way of dealing with education and poverty. And I think there's more we can do here with it in this country, and maybe there's a savvy entrepreneur out there that's going to listen to this and be like, I'm going to talk to Daphne and how can we do this? Mm-hmm. And you got your PhD and now you're helping the world with your research. So again, at the risk of sounding condescending, I'm going to say it. I'm extremely proud of you. This is incredible. This is incredible. Thank you so much for today. We really appreciate it. And I know our listeners do too. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
We will definitely have you back.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Wow. What an impressive, all our guests are impressive, but Daphne.
I know. Right. And then the fact that she raised $21,000 at that one event.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she's raised much more. Like, I'm excited if I take back bottle returns and get $6. And I'm 51 years old. I've accomplished nothing except going on stage and telling infantile jokes to make people laugh.
No. That's a different story. No,
but still, I mean, that's doing good for humanity.
Yeah. And I think for everybody, it's important to look at how Daphne didn't really follow a linear path because she had a lot of issues. She had dyslexia and didn't know it. She failed a couple classes in Spanish. She failed out 3 times in math, yet still accomplished getting a PhD.
And we saw that with her use of millions. She couldn't figure out millions and thousands.
Absolutely. And, she, at 10 years old, she had an emotional reaction, and she knew she wanted to do something differently than people around her. And she did. And she fought through, fought through some of her learning difficulties, and she didn't let that stop her. And then she started school a little bit later, and then she started her doctorate a little bit later in life.
Yep.
And she went to Kenya, and she set everything up and started humansforeducation.org. And, she didn't have to do it by the time she was 20. She didn't have to finish college by 21. She goes, I'm going to do it at my pace. And I think that's what people have to realize. It's like this linear path, these time limits we put on ourselves. Don't put a time limit on yourself. Take the time, because then the more time you take, to me, the better the better off you're going to be getting to your goals.
Right.
And Daphne hasn't even gotten to all her goals yet. Now she's going to start on a 7-year adventure solving this whole cell in the lung and
Crazy,
immunity.
Right? It's great.
It's incredible.
Crazy, but it's so impressive.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
And she still has a long life ahead of her. And so no need to rush it out there, guys. Take your time, do some good. And again, you don't need to have a linear path to succeed. You can break it and do just fine. Yeah. So I hope you guys felt as inspired and proud as I did today, and I really meant it when I said that to her.
I love that. She's amazing.
She's incredible, and I am definitely proud of her accomplishments, and it's given me a lot of things to think about.
Yeah, me too.
Personally, what I'm going to be doing, probably with her organization. Anyway, guys, thank you so much, and have a happy Thanksgiving, whatever you're going to be doing, and we will see you next week.
Say goodbye, George.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye.